Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, "You Think You Found a Shortcut, Think Again." Going through the stories here, I realized I have a malicious compliance of my own. I used to work at a software development company for medical professions. Each program had its own help desk, and then there was my team that did the support for the hardware the software ran on. I had the luck that the manager I had at that time would let me do my thing because I am all customer satisfaction and solving problems properly, so he never bothered me too much with the stupid statistics that he got shoved down his throat by upper management. Because of that, my manager also knew that any kind of half-asses customer service on my part was definitely warranted. There is a story where he and the rest of my team were signaling me to hang up the phone with an unreasonably customer I kept trying to help. The phone system was set up in a way that most of the customers would be recognized by the system and be routed to the correct help desk. The only choice menu most of them got was if they needed their software help desk or the hardware help desk. Only big flaw in this phone system was that there was no way to put people into the queue of transfer to another queue. The only way to transfer was to check with a colleague if they were willing to keep their line free so I could transfer them. I want to make it crystal clear that I am all about helping and customer service. But I had learned in the past, being the person who was the senior member of the team and did the job longer than my direct colleagues and my manager, that unfortunately a lot of customers needed to be educated, or our little team would have no time for real work because of having to play telephone operator for the other help desks. That's what you get when your team has a pickup rate of 95%. A lot of our customers, especially the general practitioners, had a habit of trying to exploit the system. So on the days the fine people of software had a bit of a waiting time as a result of a lot of people calling, they tried to find a shortcut by choosing hardware and asking us to transfer to software. This was not a real option because the system would instantly connect a person from the software queue to the first available person. As a result of this, I only transferred customers that made a genuine mistake by choosing hardware. Some issues could look hardware related at first glance but are software issues. No matter what, you choose hardware when you know you need software, you have to call back and choose software. On paper I had no problem with transferring, but most in reality you quickly learn that when you give them an inch, they take it all. Flashbacks to the nightmare month where they changed and choose option in the menu from software to hardware, and as a result we did nothing but play. You did not listen to the menu. I transfer you now to software. You are going to keep choosing the wrong option, so you're going to have to call back and do it the proper way. So one afternoon I get a call from an annoyed general practitioner, GP, who gave up after a few minutes in the software queue and tried her luck via hardware. Me, good afternoon, technical services, company name, me speaking. GP, I have a software issue and do not wish to wait in the queue any longer. I want you to connect me to software. No hello of who she is, immediately the demand in the rudest tone I ever witnessed. Me, I am afraid that the quickest way is calling back and waiting in the software queue. You will be connected to the first available person. GP, no, I am going to wait and you are going to connect me to the first person available. Me, trying to explain that there is no available person available soon because the system would sure they would be available for 0.1 second before routing the next caller from the queue to their phone. That could be a while because... GP, I don't care, I am going to wait. Do not hang up and connect me to the first available person. Me, I fear that the wait might be longer than calling back. GP, no, I am not calling back. I waited 30 minutes, I have better things to do. You are going to connect me to the next available person. Me, knowing the longest wait in their queue today was like 5 minutes, really the quickest way. GP, no, do not hang up, I am going to wait till you connect me to the first person that is available. Me, I would not advise. GP, you listen now, I pay your salary. Not true, now hardware contract, so she only paid for software support. You are going to do what I say and connect me to the next available person. Me, giving up at this point and thinking that it might be a contender for my longest time waiting list. Okay, I will connect you to the first person of software I see available in the system. GP, you better. So I did what I do best with this kind of people. I made like Clark Gable and I frankly did not give a damn. I muted my headset and started the waiting game to see how long they would wait. After all, there were constantly 10 people waiting in their queue. Small issue after an update, easy fix, so that explains the average wait time of only 5 minutes. After a relaxing session of internet that lasted 20 minutes with an impatient rude lady on my line getting more and more annoyed, I was disturbed by the shout of somebody else on the line that was instructed a couple of minutes before to call to software and got the GP let out aloud finally before hanging up on me. After checking the hardware queue and seeing no waiting customers, I decided a trip to the coffee machine was in order so I could share my new record for longest time waiting with my amused colleagues. The next one is titled, My Neighbor Gets What She Deserves. So this happened last week and I am proud of myself for it. During this pandemic, I have found peace by sitting in my garden watching YouTube videos and scrolling Reddit. I always sit on my swing chair. A swing chair is a chair mixed with a swing, so you sit and swing without annoying chains or having to go out. My swing chair has been through a lot, so much so to the point where if you sit on it, it squeaks a bit. I like the squeaks though, so I keep using it. My neighbor hates my family ever since my mum, my brother and I moved into my now stepdad's house. She especially hates me for some reason. One day my parents got the day off from work, so we were all home. I was out on the swing chair listening to music using headphones. All of a sudden a bucket gets thrown over the fence and almost hit me. I jumped and took off my headphones. I asked, "Who did that?" My neighbor responded with, "Stop swinging on your chair. You're distracting my children and making them jealous. Either stop, or give it to me." I asked, "How am I distracting them?" She replied with, "The sound makes them look through the hole they made in the fence." I said that I'll stop. Here is the malicious compliance. I stopped going on my swing chair and instead picked up an old hobby of mine, drumming. I played it so much that my family would sometimes have to speak louder to talk to me. This is where it gets weird though. She then phoned my personal phone that I have never give the number to anyone except my close friends. Apparently she had gone to my mum's Facebook, searched for a pic of me and my friends, found my best friend's number by some means and posed as my aunt asking for my number so she could check up on me. She called me yelling at me to stop drumming. I said why and she said because of the noise. I said that she said that I had to stop swinging, so I took up a hobby. She hung up. I now go on my swing chair, play drums and play drums with my brother on his guitar. Revenge is best served cold. The next one is titled, Be the Worst Neighbors Ever? Okay, we will too. I grew up on a horse ranch in Colorado. We had a long piece of property, about 80 acres, and we raised Missouri foxtrotters. We had lived there for almost 20 years when some folks bought a strip of property way at the back of our land. It was a strange plot of land as it was very narrow, and was sandwiched between our back fence and a busy county road. We were surprised anyone would buy it actually, as it forced the house to be pretty close to said road. Well, we never meet these new neighbors until one day, my dad gets a notice from a lawyer telling us that after having surveyed the property lines, our back fence encroaches on their property between 3 and 6 inches depending on the spot along the fence line. These folks had never met us, never introduced themselves. Our first introduction was this legal demand. My father was a salt-of-the-earth kind of man, very kind, but also very strong-willed. He called these folks, arranged a meet-up, and tried to talk some sense into them. First, did 3 to 6 inches really matter that much, and why had they not come to us to talk it through? He even offered a number of different compromises. These folks were hostile from the get-go. They demanded he move the fence immediately, or they would sue. Apparently, the law stated they had to put their house so far away from our fence line, and they wanted to push it as far back from the road as they could when they built it, so they wanted that 6 inches very badly. I still remember when my dad got home from the meeting. He hung his hat up and shook his head when he told my mum in his slow way, "Well, looks like we got the kind of folks for neighbors you don't ever want to have for neighbors." They sued and won, and we were forced to move the fence in 2 weeks. I say we because I was the free slave labor, as all farm kids are for this kind of thing. All that fencing material and the time were a big cost for my family. But we got the work done that late fall. Here is where the fun comes in. So the new neighbors broke ground and built all through the end of winter and into spring. The very next weekend after they had moved into their house, Dad rousted me out of bed and we took the big truck into town to the lumber yard. I was extremely puzzled as we loaded up a bunch of fencing material and building supplies. We didn't have any big projects going that I knew about, and I kept asking him what it was for, but he just told me to wait and see with a devilish smile on his face. We built a pen and a small enclosure very near our back property line, directly behind the neighbor's new shiny house. The next day one of our farm friends delivered a half-dozen pigs to their new home. Dad insisted on feeding those hogs table scraps and all the things that would go in the composter, as well as some well-balanced hog feed to keep them healthy. Now you may not know this, but the smell of pig excrement is directly related to what they eat, and their pen conditions. Table scraps make them smell bad. I mean really bad. I had to drive the four-wheeler back there every day to take care of them, and within a month halfway to the pen and my eyes would start watering, it smelled so bad. When we mucked out the pen with the bobcat, we also made the pile right next to the pen. I can't even imagine how bad the smell was living in that house. The neighbors, of course, freaked out and again, without ever even trying to talk to us, went the legal route. They lost the case asking to have the pen removed as the area was zoned agricultural, and my dad had done his homework to make sure he was not breaking any laws or regulations. The pigs were far enough from us and our other neighbors that it didn't bother anyone but the people he wanted it to bother. Come fall, when winter moved in, we sold the pigs to slaughter, and Dad stacked up a bunch of building supplies next to the pen and let the neighbors know we would be expanding the profitable operation in the spring. He smiled the whole time, speaking in his slow, steady way as they screamed at him. The new neighbors sold their new house in January when the ground was frozen and the new owners would not smell the pen. Though as soon as the old neighbors were gone, we tore down the enclosure, spread the nasty stuff on the hayfield, and the new neighbors never had any bad smell come spring. They also were great neighbors and are still lifelong friends. Never mess with a rancher. Here's a little more context. My dad really did want to try to cultivate a good relationship with a new neighbor, even though they started on such a lousy foot. He offered to sell them 5 acres of land at the back of the property at a super affordable price so they could have a better plot and get well back from the road. Our back fence line was almost 5 acres long, so it would have shaved an acre-long line off is all, and that was wooded land that was not good pasture land anyway. They were not interested. They had plenty of funds too, by the way, as they were sitting on $1 million payout from selling their home in CA, which we knew as they brought it up multiple times in the discussion. Statements that they had all the money they needed to take us to court if we didn't comply immediately. My dad asked if he could move the fence over time rather than being hit for the cost all at once. Ranches are not made of money. We could move the section right behind the proposed building site immediately to help with planning etc. first. They were not willing to do that. It all had to be moved immediately. Lastly, my dad was friends with the 2 guys that did the inspections for the county for this kind of stuff. We had built many additions and changed on the ranch over time as well. They were all in the volunteer fire department together as well. He offered to get all of them together and see what options they had for dealing with the offset issue. The neighbor refused, again demanding the fence be moved immediately. If you see a theme here, so did my dad. There is no pleasing some people, so my dad let him take us to court. I later found out Dad was using the time to save up some money since he figured he would have to move the fence and that was expensive, and he hoped maybe the neighbor would not push it that far and come to work with him rather than go to all that cost. I know my dad reached out a couple more times to the neighbor before things went to court too. The next one is titled, "Don't Stand Next to You on a Crowded Train." This is what you get instead. I live in London where the underground is pretty busy during rush hour. The train that was due had been held at the previous station, so by the time it reached the station I was in, it was sardines in every carriage. I stepped into a carriage near the door and stood next to a guy who was standing by the door. At least 2 layers of people pushed in past me in such a way that I didn't even need to hold on to anything, apart from my backpack, which I removed and held in front of me by its straps, because people who don't remove their backpacks on a crowded train are the absolute worst. However, due to being squeezed so tightly, my elbow kept being pushed lightly into this guy's side every time the train braked, and I had nowhere to move because we were all crammed so tightly. Before I could look at him and apologize, he rudely shoved his arm really hard, away from him. The train braked again and he repeated his shoving, so the conversation went like this: me, can you please not do that? Him, with barely suppressed rage, well, you keep elbowing me on the side. Me, I don't intend to, but I am holding my bag and I am being pushed, where do you expect me to move to? Him, well, every time you elbow me I'm going to shove you away. Don't stand next to me if you don't want that to happen. Me, do you honestly think I want to stand next to you? We are all trying to take this train somewhere, it's not just you, and we are all being squeezed and crushed here. Him, rolls his eyes. So I decided to comply with his request to not stand next to him. At the next stop, I shifted and made space to allow any new incoming passengers to stand next to him. A big guy with a duffel bag took my place and stood next to him, and I could see the guy being bumped and elbowed, again. I caught his eye as he glared at me and I smiled back sweetly at him. The next stop was a woman with a boxy handbag with sharp corners, even better. For the next 7 stops, I made sure to subtly move in such a way that any newcomer would stand next to him and he never got a moment without being shoved by more and more passengers and their luggage and limbs. And I kept smiling at him every time he looked at me, and he kept glaring at me for complying with his request. The last one is titled, You Want to One-Up Your Friendly Neighbor? Alrighty then. A few years ago, I used to work at a toy store. The store mainly focused on high-priced and European-made toys. One of our big sellers in the toy store is Sylvanian Families, SF. They're basically little animal figures that you can buy accessories and houses and stuff for them. Think of them as animal doll houses. They're from Europe and they can be pretty expensive. The store is in an area where the families have a high disposable income. As in, quite often you see Mercedes, Porsches, BMWs, Audis and Ferraris inhabiting the parking spaces. Well, as you'd expect, with high disposable income comes that real, keeping up with the Joneses mentality. One-upping is rife in this area. Toys are no exception. SF are hot items for parents to use as a way to determine their child's social status, so the bigger the collection, the bigger their kid is in the rich fish pool. I know the family with the biggest SF collection belongs to a little girl, about 7, whose mother works for the Japanese embassy. The father is a lecturer. So a big money family. This family, I'll call the Jays, are the most kind and sweet-hearted family in existence. They pay top dollar for their little daughter and she is so sweet and humble when she wants to chat with us. It's a delight when they shop here. We also know that their neighbors are the exact opposite. I don't know what the husband does, but the wife I'm sure is a moocher. Think Peggy Bundy from Married with Children. In fact, that's what I'll call this mother. Whatever the Jay's daughter had, Peggy's 8-year-old tyrant had to have one more or better quality. Actually, whatever the Jays have, she demands to do one better. Peggy is honestly the type that if Mrs. J came down with a cold, she'd run naked from her house in the dead of winter, straight into the hospital's ICU and pencil roll over the contagious patients and drink from their catheter waste containers and colostomy bags in the hopes she'd contract pneumonia. Anyway, Peggy must have heard that the Jay's daughter was given some SF as a birthday present. They spent about $90. This was about a week before Peggy's arrival to settle the score. Peggy flew into the store like a misguided menopausal missile, zooming across the western section of the store before detonating in the upper atmosphere that is the central part of the store with a velociraptor-like shriek. Peggy, where are the Sylvanian families? Me, in the eastern section of the store. I point to a pyramid of SF toys, most of them recent arrivals, and she may as well have been the alien queen finding Ellen Ripley. She power marched over to the pyramid and scanned each and every one. She snapped her fingers at me. Peggy, you. Here. Now. Not a lot of things get up my goat, but finger snapping at me like I'm a dog is definitely one of them. I suck it up and see what she wants to buy. I know she's buying and buying big. Me, found something you like. Peggy, how much did the Jays spend on their daughter's SF? Me, I dunno. $90. You can hear the Jeopardy theme go in her head as she's working out how to top 90 quid on her SF present. Peggy, well then, my son is turning 9 in a month and I want his collection to be better than Jay's daughter's collection. Me, okay. This was a Friday and is generally one of our days where head office demands that we reach a high sales target. We had a slow day up until this point, and unless we had a miracle money bag drop on us from on high, we were not going to reach close to that day's budget. It's company policy to recommend toys to parents, but not make it an effort to deliberately gouge them. A lot of the high-income earners in the area could be a real Scrooge and didn't take kindly to us trying to proverbially cut open the bottoms of their wallets. I also wanted to make budget to finish the week on a high, so I decided to take advantage of Peggy's one-upmanship game. Her 8-year-old status meant everything to her, so I gambled on gouging her wallet to plump up my budget and her not noticing. Peggy, let's see, $90, $90. Me, ma'am, allow me to show you some of the SF toys I know the Jays don't have. Peggy immediately feasted her attention onto me as I pointed the new releases. Some of them I knew had been bought by the Jays, but hey, a little white lie every now and then never hurt, right? I assumed she was going to go for a $100 purchase, but no, I was wrong. She snapped up families, their accessories, houses, shops, schools. All the new releases, even bought multiples of some of the smaller packs when I suggested the packs work better when you have doubles of them. Jesus had left the $100 limit server long ago. Peggy keeps piling up the trolley. At this point, she's not even bothering to look at them. She's not even listening to me. If it's SF, it goes into the trolley. She's gone into an autopilot frenzy. Peggy's eroded so much of the pyramid that she discovers what we've been using to form the pyramid shape. The SF Windmill Houses. Oh boy. $250 for one of these. She takes two. Our once great pyramid has been ravaged by a Category 5 hurricane Peggy. We all thought the Sphinx of Giza's nose getting blown off was a disaster. The state of our SF pyramid was a catastrophe. By this point, I am hoping she buys all she has grabbed because it would be a royal pain to put the pyramid back together. I ring all the toys up. It's $890, I tell her the amount and Peggy huffs and steams up like a busted gasket. Peggy, no. That's not good enough. She marches back to the pyramid, takes another SF accessory pack and has me ring that up as well. It's over $900. The beast is fed. Peggy, $90? Try $900. I win. Against Jay's daughter, maybe I can see the logic in that. But in terms of outright spending, she got beaten a month later. A hoity-toity from the French embassy bought just over $1,500 of SF and dollhouses. They were much nicer than Peggy as well. As for my budget, the $900 injection went a long way to clearing it. Do I regret gouging Peggy's finances? Nope. Did her husband's? Yes. He carted one of the windmills and a whole pile of them back to the store on the following Monday and furiously demanded a refund, which we didn't do unless there was a fault or breakage on our end. I didn't work that day, but one of the managers I hated did, so her having to deal with that inferno made it all the more sweeter. Edit, I forgot to mention that Peggy paid for it on her husband's Amex, which attracts a 2% surcharge. Thanks for listening.